So my name is Ryan Penny, and I'm the founder of Perspective for Life. And this is one of my founder members, somebody who's been working with me for a long time, Milica. And the two of us are now getting started with this YouTube channel, which really is to discuss a lot of the kinds of subjects that we look at with Perspective for Life, which is based around the mind map that I have that explains why it is and how it is that we as people think, feel, live, learn, and grow. And the intention is very simple. The intention is to give insight to making sense of ourselves and others so that we can arrive at more reliable conclusions about life, about ourselves, about our relationships. And then with that, make better decisions that produce, hopefully, the kind of success and stability that we want, both personally, professionally, and relationally. So on the 31st of August, we're doing our first relationship workshop that relates to Perspective for Life. And I know that it's a subject that you've been wanting me to cover for a long time because in sort of personal practice and that kind of thing, it's a subject that we address a lot, and we try to help a lot of people, with preparing for relationships as well as dealing with difficult relationships that are struggling and on the brink of breaking down. So this is a subject dear to my own heart, and I know it is dear to you. And really, as this first YouTube video, it's the subject that we're getting started with. If you want to know more about Perspective for Life and the other things that we are addressing, we've just recently opened Perspective for Life School, and the details will be available below. It's a free community where we'll be addressing all the things that I've been covering in complementary and alternative medicine over the last 25 years that relate to how we think and how we eat and move and rest and recover and supplement and support those things. So that's everything that you'll find over at the Perspective for Life School community. But for now, maybe introduce yourself a little bit more specifically. And
I always struggle to introduce myself.
okay, so you're a founder member. We've known each other a long time.
Yes, we are friends,
We're
and I
friends.
think I had the privilege to see development of Perspective for Life, and without knowing the name and how it's going to be at the end looking. And yes, I was part of every edition of Mind Map.
Yes, the mind map is currently on version 1.24.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We laminated many.
Yeah. So in fact, I mean, that's our mind
There's
map over there. It's going to reflect a little bit, so we'll
exactly
have it
that's
there.
the
But
masterpiece.
everything we need
One
to know,
page,
one
one
page, everything we
page.
need to know about
Yes.
how we think, feel, live, learn, and grow.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit of a Swiss knife, I think, right?
Yeah, I would say
I
that.
kind of fill up every role that is necessary for you to kind of make this happen a little bit easier, and for you to focus on the content, and we make the kind of, you're the actor and we make the theater for you. So,
That's a
and
good description. You
yeah.
guys are very kind. The back end of these things are not my strength, but I love to present the things that I deal with in my own life, the way I deal with them in my own life, my family, my friendships, and very much within the clinic and the practice. So you guys give me a wonderful platform, really, to be able to present.
So selfishly, I mean, there's a reason why I wanted us in the studio as well. So
Mhm.
finally, I get to talk to you about things that I always want you to talk to me about.
Yeah.
But as you got busier and more ambitious with Perspective for Life, I kind of lost any time with you that we can.
Yeah.
And I'm going to legitimize this conversation for myself.
Which is fair, which is, in fact, part of what I think will make the actual conversation so real is you and I used to, in the earlier times, have a lot more time to spend an hour or so to discussing a lot of the concepts, which now, just which the sheer busyness doesn't allow for those conversations. But this platform allows us to sort of catch up and hopefully address the kinds of things in ways that, again, are not only beneficial to you and I, but also the people who would watch. So, yeah. So, what is it about relationships that at the moment is, at the forefront of your mind?
So it's interesting because I was looking at the latest statistics, and for some reason, we're all somewhat failing here. There's a collective sense of loneliness that has been increased. I'm talking about even younger generations. And definitely divorce rate has been increasing exponentially and slowly over the last few decades. And the question is, why is a
Mhm.
relationship so hard? So either we don't understand what good relationships are, or so there's a lot of this underneath forces that clearly we're not tapping in
Mm.
that influence this. But I just want to ask you, why are relationships so hard? Why do people come to you, and what are they confused about?
I think, What's interesting again is you tend to read much more, sort of broadly than I do a lot of these subjects. So much of what I'm doing is again with one to one and applying the principles that I've pieced together over the time. So to answer the question would be related very much to what do we understand about people? And I would say to you, there are probably three reasons why um, people would be struggling tremendously with relationships. Number one is conflict, disagreement that isn't managed well. The second is cost. Relationships require a lot to be given. And the third is expectation. So I would say to you that oftentimes people anticipate that a relationship would be in a particular way and give back in a particular way. And unmet expectation underlies a lot of the problems. So when I do the sort of workshop and when I do the explanations, there's lots involved. I mean, you know, the thing that comes to mind right away is communication. Typically, when we have a difficulty in a relationship, which is inevitable when we have a difference of opinion, that results typically in argument. If we don't know how to communicate with one another, if we can't, you know, try and understand the other person's position and then try and make sense of how all the things fit together, it leaves us very, very often in heated kinds of arguments that naturally then push us apart. So we fight, we withdraw, and that avoidance typically breaks communication to the point where we end up with a lot of assumptions. So we end up not being able to find out where the other person is at. We assume things. We assume by what we see in their behavior and what we hear in their voice or their tone of voice or their body language. And those assumptions oftentimes establish the kinds of expectations that really, at the end of the day, are not always a reflection of reality. So we end up with these um, compounding differences of opinion that lead to more and more argument, that lead to more and more distance. And then we start asking the question, is this worth it? And I think that it reaches the point where we feel as though it's costing us more than it's giving us. And whether that's over 5 months or 5 years or 20 years, that leads to a lot of the statistics that we're feeling. So, in summary, I would say to you that the breakdown is rooted in um, pretty much the disagreements that underlie our conflict and then the costs involved with little return and sadly expectations that are not being met.
So what are we not doing better? I mean, I'm gonna
Mm.
include myself here. Obviously, I'm not. So I'm,
Yeah.
I'm married for 2 decades.
Mm.
Um, I lived the whole life cycle of many things that marriage goes through, and I find myself that very often that rational thinking is slower to translate into practical. And so
Yeah.
I know when and some of the knowledge, but so doesn't translate in a moment as well as I want to. But I want to ask you, is there something that we are missing? Is there some curiosity we are missing? Are we asking the wrong questions? Is there something in the attitude in itself that we just haven't been aware of? And why are we collectively not more better at this? Why are we so? Where are we getting this skills anyway? So
That's a fair question. And I would go as far as to say to you, I don't think we've developed the skills, which is part of the reason why we're struggling. And there are multiple pieces that are sort of linked together there. So I think, again, we have expectations. I mean, I've sat with people who are struggling in relationships and they say, I thought my responsibility was just to make sure that I showed up. My thinking was that, as the husband, as long as I delivered the money and provided, I would get home and everything would be taken care of. My part's done. And why aren't the people sort of appreciative and doing the things that I think they should bring in response to me having done my part? There's an expectation. So what you're looking at is, I think, oftentimes relationships are grounded on things that are not going to provide the kind of stability and support long term. And that's usually on the basis of appearance, which is important, but it's going to be on the things that we oftentimes have not really taken a good enough look at to see what makes for good, solid, sound, long lasting relationships. We go in assuming because we have a good time and because we find ourselves mutually attractive and we have some other common grounds and possibly some common goals that we've sort of discussed in passing, that's enough to make this work.
So,
Well, it's
Kiva,
not.
can I jump in? I mean,
Sure.
there's two things here. So, choosing the right partner, is
Yep.
there a right partner, and how to choose the right partner? And then once you choose, how do you maintain? Where are the checkpoints? What do you use as a checkpoints? What kind of things should you be
Mm,
using to maintain? So the first point is really, is there a right partner? And how would I know?
mm,
And with whom to stay or not stay?
mm.
And then once I'm committed, how do you actually sustain that commitment to become stronger and healthier over time?
So I think, I've long since held the opinion that any two people, if they are committed, can make a relationship work if they can resolve conflict well. So I'm of the opinion that people should be expecting that no matter who they're with, no matter how easy the relationship is to begin with, there is going to be disagreement. And disagreement is going to be presented much more readily when we've been together a while, because that tendency to want to portray a particular image of, I'm easygoing and, I like what you like, and all the kinds of things that make for ease and attractiveness, well, that becomes a lot of hard work. And as I said, cost becomes a major factor. So all of a sudden, we're wired in pursuit of efficiency. So I'll give enough to get me what I think I need. Now I've sort of received what I wanted. I give a little bit less. And that sort of interplay of giving a little less, receiving a little less, progressively creates more of a, well, I'll just show you who I am. And I think most people can relate to that. Most people can say, they were so amazing when we first got started. And then they're like a whole different person right now, because I don't think we're honest enough to start out. I don't think we're honest enough to share who we really are authentically, because we're afraid that that person is not going to like us and that person is going to then step back and then we're going to lose out. So I think, again, honesty is key to begin with. To make a commitment, to be honest with you, I don't see commitment really following through. In fact, people will say, this person is afraid of a commitment. A commitment's a commitment. A commitment is saying, I'm here for the long term. I'm here for the long haul. I'm persevering when things are going to be tough because I know things are going to be challenging. And I think when we find the cost too high and we're finding the reward too little, then commitment is like, oh, you know what? Maybe I should be committing somewhere else if we really even understand what commitment means. So there are multiple little factors. So when I look at the whole thing in terms of you're asking, how do we know the right partner? How do we choose the right partner? This is the analogy that I would often use. If you were on an island and there was one other person there, um, how long before you sort of hit it off and recognize that we're partners? And who would that person be? The simple reality is, if we're the last two people on the planet, I don't think that we would have any scenario where, if there was a guy and there was a girl and they were on that particular island where they found themselves mutually attractive to begin with or not, it's a matter of time until they come together. Why? Because we're wired to basically love and be loved. So we are wired to basically find life better together. And Better Together really is the title of the entire workshop that I do. And the reason is, very simply, is when we combine our time, our energy, our skills, our resources, our information, we should be better at life. We are better together. But it's this conflict and this cost, and again, this expectation, amongst a few other things, that typically make it a challenge. So, do I think that there are some people who find relationships more fun and more easy when they meet? Of course. But that doesn't necessarily mean that those are the ingredients for a long lasting relationship. It's going to come down to some fundamentals that I call the sort of foundational principles of safe relationships, not merely secure, but beyond that into a couple of other descriptions that relate to safe, such as sincere and along the lines of sensitive. Oftentimes, we need to be mindful of how attentive we are and appreciative we are. And yes, the fun is a component, but how forgiving are we? And then also, do we find commitment and empathy to really contributing to enriching one another's lives? I think if we understand those foundational principles which sort of come together to spell safe, and we are committed, we would find that if people were able to resolve the conflicts that they have or the disagreements, we would not be sitting with those kind of statistics. So, back again to the question, I think any people can make it work. I do think some people make it work more easily and with more fun. But I do also think that when we go ahead and we work on the commitment and we enrich one another's lives, that things become easier and more fun along the way. So I'm trying to tackle a massive subject here and almost condense everything. But I think we're pretty poor at being open and honest to begin with. I think we're not clear on what our expectations are, even for ourselves. And I think we underestimate the load that is typically required, even in great relationships. So I think as we go in with those things and then the pressures of life and external factors, people who interfere, other potential opportunities, bigger, better deals, those kinds of things. Those are just some of the things. I think I've got a list of about 20 or 30 of the things that can erode relationships. So, preparing for relationships, very good. Caring for relationships, very important. And repairing relationships, heading back to safety. These are all the kinds of things that I cover in the workshop and when I'm dealing with the people.
It's interesting because I remember when you first defined love,
Hmm.
we realized that we never have this curiosity with a lot of people. We don't ask them what kind of assume this is general knowledge or everyone
Yeah.
shares the same definition. What is love? I also remember, when we discussed what's the right person, how do you know if it's the right person, and does he make you a better person
Hmm.
itself? Do you change? Are you triggered to change in a way that actually provokes more giving and more nurturing of that concept of love? So maybe you can just really repeat what is the
Yeah.
really definition of love, which gives a
So
different
my take,
position and kind of gives accountability on the person itself first, and rather than change the other
100%.
person so I'm gonna be happier
Do
rather
your
than
part. Do
yeah,
your
do your
part to
part.
enriching this other person's life, which is why that, end part that I mentioned, enriching the other person. Can I make or contribute to making them better? Can they contribute to making me better? Can we be genuinely better, better off, and better together? And the answer is yes. And how does that work? Well, if we understand that love is more than a romantic affection, but it is a sacrificial giving of good to the other person. The idea is it's going to cost me and I'm going to give it. This is a key distinction that I make for people, not only for a purpose, but for a reason. And there's a key distinction there, but that'll be for another discussion. So I'm going to leave it there for now, just simply because I don't want these videos to go too long.
I agree.
Relationships are key. They're a key component of life. And I think that we have the tools that are very, very helpful for people, as I said, preparing for, caring for, and repairing the kinds of safe relationships that genuinely make life more enjoyable, more productive, greater stability, safe. And you're going to find more information on that at the school community where we have our discussions and where we can discuss these kinds of things. I've also got some courses available there that are free as a part of the community. And we also have a weekly 1 hour mind map Mondays. So I welcome anybody to join. The details again are here under this video. We'll get together again soon to discuss, or maybe some of the next things more specifically on relationships. So thank you, Malik.
Thank you, Ryan.